Goldilocks, the hyper-inclusive forest edition. A bedtime satire for grown-ups who like their fairy tales with a wink. In a forest recently reclassified as a shared multi-species equity zone, lived a girl named Goldilocks. Named not after her hair, labels can be limiting, but because she preferred a name that radiated inner luminosity during her mindful self-renaming phase. Every day she wandered the woods with the same purpose: to explore, to learn, and to remain vigorously, almost theatrically, self-aware. One fine morning, Goldilocks stumbled upon a cottage she had never seen before. But this forest was no lawless land. Every home came with mandatory transparency signage. Pinned neatly to the door was a wooden plaque that read, "Visitors welcome. Please enter with consent, care, and consciousness." Goldilocks read it twice, then once more, scanning for implicit bias. Finding none, she adjusted her ethically sourced backpack and stepped inside, slowly, respectfully, and with excellent posture. Inside the cottage, C found 3 bowls of porridge labeled Papa Bear's Porridge, proudly hot. Mama Bear's Porridge, cooled to room temperature following best practices. Little Bear's Porridge, Goldilocks Zone certified. Goldilocks tasted each and immediately filled out a 12-question feedback form, rating them on texture, spice equity, temperature justice, and mouthfeel inclusivity. She left notes such as, "Papa Bear, this porridge expresses unnecessary aggression. Mama Bear, thank you for your emotional labor stabilizing this temperature. Little Bear, your porridge respects my lived experience. Ah, just right. Balanced, supportive, emotionally available." Next, Goldilocks examined the bear family's seating infrastructure. She sat in the first chair and immediately felt hierarchically intimidated. The second chair felt performatively comfortable, like it was trying too hard to seem supportive. The third chair wobbled under her, prompting her to leave a sticky note. "Please review structural integrity. Metaphors for fragile systems abound." With a deep sigh of civic responsibility, Goldilocks continued her assessment. Goldilocks climbed upstairs, committed to conducting a full-spectrum restfulness audit. She tried the first bed. It felt too patriarchal. The second bed felt emotionally unavailable, like it had been to 3 years of therapy but still hadn't processed anything. The third bed, however, was non-judgmentally supportive. Goldilocks nestled in, whispering, "Thank you for holding space for my body and my feelings." And with that, she accidentally fell asleep, ethically. Meanwhile, the bear family returned from their morning activities, including forest yoga, community composting, and a workshop on deconstructing species stereotypes. The moment they stepped inside, they sensed a disturbance in the ethical energy. Papa Bear sniffed the air. "Someone has redistributed my porridge," he rumbled, not angrily, just noting the data. Mama Bear tilted her head. "Someone evaluated our seating infrastructure," she said thoughtfully. Little Bear gasped. "And someone is sleeping in my bed, with evident emotional support." They prepared to engage the recommended conflict resolution protocol. Goldilocks awoke to 3 silhouettes towering over her, though towering is a loaded term she'd prefer to unpack later. Papa Bear cleared his throat. "Visitor, do we have your consent to initiate a feelings check-in?" Goldilocks nodded, half asleep but fully committed to emotional transparency. Mama Bear clasped her paws gently. "We'd like to understand your intentions, your needs, and any unprocessed narratives you may be carrying." Little Bear added enthusiastically, "And then we can all co-author a mutual understanding document." Goldilocks stretched, sat up, and said softly, "I appreciate your process. I think I was just tired. And your bed held space for me." They all gathered in the living room, which conveniently featured a dialogue-friendly seating arrangement the bears had learned about in their community mediation workshop. Papa Bear began, "I acknowledge that finding you in our home was surprising, and I'm working through that feeling without assigning blame." Mama Bear added, "I acknowledge your courage in sharing your truth, even when half asleep and possibly dehydrated." Little Bear chimed in, "I acknowledge that my bed supported you in ways that honor both body and boundaries." Goldilocks smiled sleepily. "I acknowledge your hospitality and your signage. Your signage was incredibly clear." And so, the circle of acknowledgement continued, gently and excessively. After acknowledging everything that could possibly be acknowledged, the group moved on to constructive collaboration. Papa Bear cleared the table. Mama Bear brought out a rainbow set of biodegradable markers. Little Bear unfurled a massive sheet labeled Draft Forest Charter for Respectful Coexistence, version 7.3 Beta. Goldilocks gasped. Are we co-authoring a living document? Papa Bear nodded gravely. Every resident contributes, even unexpected ones. Goldilocks grinned. I've waited my whole life for this moment. Together, they began writing guidelines that would shape the ethical future of the woodland community. With the Forest Charter drafted, debated, and meticulously color-coded, the Bear family and Goldilocks felt a glow of collective accomplishment. Mama Bear suggested, shall we commemorate this moment of cross-species solidarity? Little Bear was already ahead of her, holding up a polished wooden smartphone, handcrafted, ethically sourced, saying, Group selfie for transparency and community morale. Goldilocks leaned in. Papa Bear adjusted the lighting. Mama Bear raised a paw in gentle enthusiasm. Together, they captured the first ever Forest Coexistence Collective selfie. Immediately captioned and posted, hashtag living in harmony, hashtag forest allies, hashtag consent culture, hashtag porridge for all. After documenting their historic moment of hyper-conscious cooperation, it was time for Goldilocks to go. Papa Bear, in his deep, rumbly voice, said, Thank you for engaging in reflective practice with us. Mama Bear added warmly, We appreciate your willingness to co-create emotional safety. Little Bear bounced on his paws. Come back anytime. Just remember to knock, fill out the visitor form, and complete the pre-visit boundary awareness survey. Goldilocks nodded respectfully. I'll return with deeper insight, greater mindfulness, and maybe a reusable container for that porridge. They exchanged a series of consent-based, species-neutral goodbyes.